Welcome to Brain Bites, the podcast of big ideas in small bites. Each episode is a quick journey into fascinating topics, from science, society, life's mysteries, to intriguing insights you can take one bite at a time. In today's bite, we confront the biggest mystery of all. What happens when we die?
Let's be real for a second.
Okay.
The whole what happens after we die thing.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest question mark out there.
Right.
And judging by this mountain of research you sent my way, you are more than ready to go full-on detective on this whole death mystery.
It's a fascinating topic, isn't it? Even with all our fancy science and technology,
For sure.
death still feels like this big unknown.
Totally.
So are you ready to dive into the science?
Absolutely.
The cultural beliefs?
Yeah.
All of it?
I am so ready. Let's unravel this thing.
Okay.
We're talking science, spirituality, the whole 9 yards. But before we get to those pearly gates or whatever awaits on the other side, let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What's the biological rundown when the lights go out for good?
All right. So in medical terms, death is usually declared when two things happen.
Okay.
One, the heart stops beating its rhythmic beat.
Right.
And two, the brain's electrical activity goes silent.
So it's like the engine and the control center both just going kaput.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They both just power down.
Game over.
Yeah, and not in the like reboot and try again kind of way.
Oh, this is permanent.
Oh, this is the end.
This is it.
So no more late night snack cravings.
Nope.
When that brain activity flatlines.
No more cravings. But you mentioned cardiac death. Is that different?
It is. Cardiac death is when your heart, that's like our body's own personal drum line.
Okay.
Just stops.
Okay.
No more beat, no more blood flowing to the brain or anywhere else.
Wow.
What's wild is that some people who have been revived after cardiac death actually just say they were aware of what was going on around them.
Really?
Yeah, some even talk about seeing the light.
Oh, wow.
Which, that gives those near-death experience stories a whole other layer of whoa.
Okay, that's giving me chills.
Yeah.
And intrigue all at once.
It's pretty wild.
It's like our brains send out one last hurrah postcard.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a final flicker of activity.
Like a little goodbye message.
But it sounds like we have a very limited time to enjoy those otherworldly postcards, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, after the heart stops, you've got about 4 to 6 minutes.
Okay.
Before the brain is gone beyond repair. That's when biological death officially sets in.
Game over.
Game over.
No amount of coffee or a good pep talk is bringing us back from that.
Nope, that's it.
So what's next for the physical body once we cross that final frontier?
Well, let's just say it's not the most dignified exit.
Oh, no.
All the muscles relax.
Okay.
And yes, that includes those we usually don't discuss in polite company.
Oh. So much for going out with grace.
Right.
And hold on, did you say something about movement?
Yeah, you're not imagining things. Even after death, the body might twitch or jerk a bit.
Really?
Yeah, it's due to involuntary muscle contractions.
Oh.
And believe it or not, some nurses have reported hearing groans or moans. Yeah, it can be startling.
I bet.
But it's just air escaping the lungs.
Oh, okay.
Not a ghostly encore performance or anything.
Okay, you have officially ensured I will never look at a quiet room the same way again.
Right.
This deep dive is already full of surprises.
Yeah.
What about the more familiar signs of death we see in movies, like rigor mortis?
Rigor mortis.
Yeah.
That stiffening of the muscles actually kicks in surprisingly fast.
Yeah.
Usually within 2 to 6 hours.
Wait, 6 hours and I'm a human popsicle?
Pretty much.
That's way faster than Hollywood lets on.
Yeah, they don't usually get the timing quite right.
No, they don't.
It's true. Calcium builds up in the muscle cells, causing that stiffness. And around the same time, you've got livor mortis,
Okay.
which is where blood settles in the lower parts of the body,
Oh, right.
leading to that purplish discoloration.
So we're talking a grand finale of bodily fluids, muscle spasms, and a rather unflattering skin tone change.
Basically.
It's enough to make you want to add avoid dying to your to-do list.
Right.
And we're just getting started.
We are.
Remember that vivid description in one of the articles about
Yeah.
the, shall we say, unique aroma of decomposition?
Yes.
The one that compared the smell to rotten eggs, feces, and a porta potty at a music festival times 1,000.
Yeah, that was a vivid one.
Not exactly the kind of scent you want to remember someone by.
No, not really.
But what exactly is happening during decomposition that creates such a potent bouquet?
Well, after rigor mortis comes putrefaction.
Putrefaction? What is that?
This is where the after party starts. But instead of your friends, it's bacteria and microorganisms.
Oh, no.
Breaking down tissues and organs.
Ugh.
And yes, it's just as unpleasant as it sounds.
And if we're talking traditional burial, this process takes a while, right?
Absolutely. Even with those bacteria working overtime, it can take 8 to 12 years for a body to fully decompose in the ground.
8 to 12 years?
Yeah, above ground, though.
Oh, boy.
It's a whole different story.
You mean where it only takes about a month to become, shall we say, one with nature?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, that's a whole other level of returning to the earth.
Right.
Maybe cremation is a better option. At least for those of us who prefer a less hands-on approach to becoming one with the circle of life.
Well, cremation is certainly an option.
Yeah.
And there's always composting.
Composting,
Yeah.
like what you do with food scraps.
Exactly. It's becoming increasingly popular as people look for more eco-friendly options. It's all about returning to the earth in the most literal sense.
Composting. Now that's thinking outside the pine box.
Right.
So we've covered the science of decomposition.
We have.
But those articles you sent also mentioned that most people believe in some form of afterlife.
That's right.
That's a fascinating contrast.
It really is.
Yeah.
Despite living in a world increasingly driven by science,
Right.
a significant portion of the population holds on to the idea that our consciousness, our essence,
Yeah.
persists after our physical bodies shut down.
It's like this primal need to believe that there's something more,
I think so.
something beyond the here and now.
Yeah.
And these beliefs are all over the map, from heaven and hell to reincarnation, right?
Exactly. It's not just about whether there's an afterlife,
Right.
but what kind of afterlife.
Right.
And these beliefs often stem from cultural and religious traditions passed down through generations,
Interesting.
like whispers across time.
Which brings us to some of the big hitters in philosophy.
Okay.
Descartes, with his mind-body dualism,
Yeah.
argued that the soul and body are separate entities.
Right. Separate but interacting.
Right. And then you've got Nietzsche with his concept of eternal recurrence.
Oh, yes.
Which, if I'm wrapping my head around this right,
Okay.
suggests that we're all stuck reliving the same life
Uh-huh.
over and over
Yes.
for all eternity.
That's the gist of it.
Talk about pressure to get things right the first time.
Right. Like no pressure or anything.
You're telling me if I'm going to be stuck in this loop, I need to make some serious life changes.
You and me both.
But seriously, it's mind-blowing how these different philosophies paint such vastly different pictures
I know, it's amazing.
of what death might or might not be.
Right.
It's like trying to solve a cosmic jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing.
A very complex puzzle.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just Western philosophy trying to figure this whole thing out. Eastern traditions, like Buddhism, have their own take on the whole afterlife thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned reincarnation earlier,
Yeah.
which is a core concept in Buddhism.
Okay.
But instead of Nietzsche's Groundhog Day scenario
Right.
of reliving the same life over and over again,
Yeah.
Buddhism talks about samsara.
Samsara.
Yeah, it's a cycle of death and rebirth, where each life is shaped by karma.
Okay. So less stuck in a time loop and more like cosmic upgrade program
You got it.
where your actions determine your next level.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal in Buddhism is to break free from this cycle of samsara altogether and
Wow.
achieve nirvana, a state of liberation from suffering and the endless cycle of birth and death.
So while Nietzsche might have you stressing about perfecting this life,
Right.
Buddhism offers a path to transcending the entire system.
It's a different perspective for sure.
It really is. It's amazing how these different viewpoints completely reframe the way we think about death and what might come after.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It makes me wonder, though, do these beliefs actually change the way people live their lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I think so.
It's one thing to ponder these concepts intellectually.
Oh, right.
But do they actually translate into real actions or changes in how people behave?
Yeah.
I think that's where things get really interesting.
Because if you really believed you were coming back for round 2,
Right.
wouldn't you be a little more mindful of your actions? Maybe lay off the junk food a bit?
Maybe just a little.
And if you're aiming for nirvana, wouldn't that influence your values and how you treat others?
Precisely.
Yeah.
It seems pretty intuitive. that our beliefs about what happens after death would influence our behavior in this life.
It would make sense.
And there's actually a fair bit of research that looks into this very connection.
Oh, really? Like what kind of research are we talking about?
Well, some studies have shown that people who believe in an afterlife,
Okay.
regardless of their specific religion, tend to be more altruistic and engaged in pro-social behaviors.
Interesting.
They're more likely to volunteer, donate to charity, and generally just act in ways that benefit others.
So it's like the idea of cosmic karma isn't just some philosophical concept.
Right.
It actually motivates people to be better humans.
It seems that way.
Uh-huh.
And on the flip side, there's research suggesting that people who don't believe in an afterlife
Yeah.
might be more prone to risky behavior. You know, if this is the only life we get, they might be more inclined to live in the moment.
Right.
Even if it means bending the rules a bit or doing things that could have negative consequences.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like our beliefs about death aren't just these abstract ideas.
Yeah.
They actually have the power to shape our choices and actions right here, right now.
Pretty powerful stuff.
It really is. But what about people who don't subscribe to any specific religion or belief system?
Yeah.
How do they wrap their heads around death and the great unknown?
That's a great question. And I think it speaks to how universal this existential pondering really is.
Yeah.
Even without a religious framework, humans are naturally curious about what happens after we die.
We want answers.
It's this profound mystery that connects us all.
We like solving puzzles.
We do.
And while science might not have all the answers about what happens after death,
True.
it does offer a pretty fascinating look into the physical process of decomposition.
It does.
We talked about how long it takes.
Right.
But what about the things that can speed up or slow down that process?
Oh, yeah. There are several factors that can influence the rate of decomposition.
Okay, like what?
Well, we touched on how a body decomposes faster above ground.
Right.
But even below ground, things like temperature, humidity, burial depth,
Oh, wow.
even the type of soil can all impact how quickly decomposition occurs.
So a shallow grave in a humid swamp is basically an express lane to decomposition.
Well, it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Okay.
But you get the idea.
I do.
And speaking of different approaches to decomposition, one of your articles mentioned green burials, which are becoming increasingly popular. Have you heard about those?
Yeah, it's like the eco-friendly option, right?
Exactly.
No embalming fluids, biodegradable caskets, the whole 9 yards.
That's right. It's all about letting nature reclaim what was once hers.
It's a beautiful way to look at it.
It is.
There's something kind of poetic about returning to the earth,
Yeah,
becoming part of that natural cycle again.
absolutely.
Speaking of cycles, it makes me think about that Buddhist concept of samsara again.
Okay.
If our physical bodies are constantly being recycled back into the earth, does that lend any weight to the idea
Okay.
that maybe our consciousness or energy might also be recycled in some way?
Now that is the question, isn't it?
I think it is.
And unfortunately, it's one that science hasn't been able to definitively answer yet.
Not yet.
But it definitely opens the door to some intriguing possibilities.
It does. And it brings us back to that core mystery of this whole deep dive.
Yes.
What really happens after we die?
The big question.
Do we just stop existing, or is death just a transition to some other realm of existence?
It's a mystery.
It really is.
And that's the beauty of this whole topic.
Okay.
Despite centuries of philosophical and scientific inquiry,
I know, right?
it remains one of life's greatest unanswered questions.
Which I have to say is kind of exciting.
It is.
It means we still have so much to explore and think about.
That's true.
And who knows? Maybe someday science will be able to shed some light on these mysteries.
Maybe so.
But until then, I guess we're left to grapple with these big questions on our own.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes the most profound journeys are those that take us into the unknown.
I like that.
The important thing is to keep asking questions, keep searching for answers, and keep an open mind to the possibilities.
Couldn't agree more. You know, it's amazing how we can go from talking about,
Yeah.
the nitty-gritty of decomposition to, like, these big philosophical questions.
It's true.
And it all just kind of makes sense together.
It's a testament to how everything is connected, isn't it?
It really is.
From those tiny microorganisms dragging things down to the vastness of the universe,
Right.
it all fits together somehow.
It's all part of the same big picture.
Exactly.
And here we are, trying to make sense of it all.
Trying our best.
One deep dive at a
Or
time.
one question at a time.
But, even if we never really figure out what happens after we die,
Right.
just thinking about it,
Right.
exploring these questions, it has to mean something, right?
I think so. I think it's Like Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. When we think about death, when we face those big questions, it makes us live more intentionally, I think.
It's true. Suddenly that huge pile of laundry doesn't seem so bad.
Right.
But seriously, I think you've hit on something really important here.
Oh, wait.
Facing our mortality, even if it's just indirectly like we're doing right now,
Yeah.
it can be a really powerful reminder to appreciate what we have.
It reminds us what really matters.
Exactly. It's about being present in this moment, appreciating the people around us, and just trying to make a positive impact.
Absolutely. It's about finding joy in the everyday, being grateful for the relationships in our lives.
Yeah.
And leaving the world a little better than we found it.
Well said. And who knows, maybe that's the closest we can get to understanding what comes next.
Maybe so. It's a beautiful thought.
It is.
And maybe in the grand scheme of things, it's not about finding all the answers,
Yeah.
but about being okay with mystery, with the unknown, with how complex life and death really are.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well,
There you have it, folks. Another deep dive in the books.
another one down.
We've covered the science of death, the philosophical debates, and even how our final act impacts the environment.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has, and we've only just scratched the surface.
That's true.
Death, with all its mysteries and complexities, will keep us guessing for years to come.
Oh, for sure. It's the ultimate mystery.
It is. So to all you brave souls out there, keep asking those big questions.
Keep searching.
Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.